So you're excited. You just bought that new property. You're getting ready to close, and the title work comes back, and it's clouded. There's an issue with the title. What do we do about that? Does that mean that we can't close? The answer is it just depends. I'm Mike Renick. I'm the senior broker and team lead with Team Renick Real Estate Services, part of that great Keller Williams on the water family, serving the west coast of Florida. My guest today, and I'm not going to bring him live until I go through the introduction, because if I do, he may shorten it. So anyway, our guest today, as with every Wednesday morning, is Michael Hankin, an attorney with a law firm of Hankin & Hankin. He practices primarily in the areas of residential and commercial real estate transaction. He's an approved agent for the Chicago Title Insurance Company, the Attorney's Title Insurance Fund, and the Old Republic Title Insurance Company. He's been designated as a board-certified real estate attorney. That's the highest level of recognition by the Florida Bar. Bottom line, he's just a great guy, very knowledgeable, willing to share his information to help us with our real estate questions and transactions. So we're one click away here. And Mike, good morning, Michael. How are you?
Good morning, Mike. Doing well. And yourself?
The same. I did shorten that a little bit. Did you notice?
I did. Thank you. I'm going to have to get Eric to do a little bit more, but we're going in the right direction.
Well, I was thinking that I would ask Shannon, your wife, for folks that don't know you, to write your bio and see if it's anywhere similar to the one that I have.
I guarantee it would have much shorter words in it. I'm not sure it would be any shorter, but the words would be shorter.
But I wondered if I'm going to wait until you're in the doghouse, because all of us do things once in a while, and that happens. So then I'll have her write your bio, and we'll see what we come up with.
Excellent.
So
today I wanted to discuss one of the most common issues which comes up in real estate transaction, and that's title defects. There's all sorts of different title defects we run into. We run into defective prior deeds, unreleased interests, such as mortgages from not the current owner, but a prior owner that haven't been released, judgment liens or claims of liens that are filed against the property, or the most common, encroachments into setbacks. This is obviously a huge topic. So I want to do my best to narrow it down and give some helpful information. So today I'm going to talk about really the most common title defect we run into, and that's encroachment into neighborhood subdivision restrictions. So first, let's start off. What is a neighborhood subdivision restriction? Neighborhoods, not all of them, but many of them in Southwest Florida, have subdivision restrictions which limit what you can do with your property. Most people are aware that there's rental restrictions or pet restrictions in some of the neighborhoods, and so they run into their subdivision restrictions in that context. Sometimes they'll get a nasty letter that says, hey, you didn't cut your grass. And unfortunately, that's not where subdivision restrictions end. Subdivision restrictions also have what's called setback lines. Not always, but the standard. And a setback line is this invisible line, which is the maximum distance your improvements can be built to your property lines. So said a little bit more clearly, the restrictions say your house can't be more than X number of feet from the front yard line, or X number of feet from the side lot lines or rear lot lines. The county doesn't check these lines for you when you build a home. The county makes sure that when you build an improvement, it complies with their requirements, but it doesn't make sure that it complies with the subdivision requirements. So oftentimes a structure is built and encroaches into these setbacks, and in the process of ordering the title, reviewing the survey, we recognize that there's this issue. So first, what do you do when you realize that your house is built in 2 feet too close to the street or to the side lot line or rear lot line? The first and most important thing is to preserve your rights. You need to send a notice under the contract. I'm referring to the as-is contract, and particularly paragraph 18A. A buyer's obligated to send a notice if they want to preserve their rights, letting the seller know, hey, there's this title defect, the house is built too close to the street.
Mm-hmm.
When that occurs under the contract, the seller is obligated to use diligent effort to try really hard to fix that title defect, and they have 30 days to do that. If they're unable to cure it, the buyer either gets to close in its existing, with the title in its existing condition, or they get to terminate.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when that arises, those issues arise, what happens? So you've noticed the house that you're looking at buying is built 2 feet into the setback, you've raised the defect, and now you're sitting around waiting. What's the seller doing while you're waiting? What sort of diligent efforts are they supposed to be undertaking? For subdivision restrictions, it's a little bit different on each one. You have to examine the restrictions, see what mechanism they have in place for granting a variance to the restrictions. Sometimes the association board of directors will have the authority to grant variances, and it may just take a quick meeting of the association to be able to do that. Just the board of directors, not a full meeting. Other associations, the president has the sole and absolute authority to do it. So you only got to convince one person in that case. And in the worst of situations, you have to get every single affected homeowner to vary those restrictions if it requires a unanimous approval and does not delegate authority to a association to grant those variances. You can imagine, that is a bit impossible to get every person to agree. I can't get everybody to agree the sun's going to come up tomorrow, let alone agree to grant a variance on a 2-foot encroachment. So let's say you're in that situation. You've got a house under contract. You've noticed there's an encroachment. You've raised it as a defect. Ideally, the seller in those 30 days is going to go out. They're going to get the variance from the association. You fix the problem, everything's great, and we continue on. But if they don't, and you still really want the house, what do? Can you go ahead and close with this encroachment? What are the ramifications of doing that? Well, this encroachment is a violation of the restrictions. So the association has the right to enforce those restrictions and tear that down. Now you can imagine, you probably have never heard of an association enforcing these setback rights and saying, hey, you got to tear down the front 2 feet of your house. It's too close to the street. We don't care that it's been there for 30 years. That doesn't happen. And because of that, quite often we're able to convince our title underwriters to go ahead and provide extra insurance to cover the forced removal of a structure. It's called a 9.2 Alta endorsement. But you don't need to worry about that. You just say, I want to be covered in case somebody tries to tear down my house. And so that's a way you can get extra, at least title insurance coverage for the forced removal in the event that you can't get, the seller can't get a variance from the association. If, again, the seller can't get the variance from the association, you have another problem, though. It's not just forced removal. If you say, I don't care, I'm going to buy this house, nobody's going to tear it down, it's fine. When you go to sell that house, you have a problem where your buyer may object to the same things you've objected to. And while often we can get extra title insurance coverage for the forced removal of the structure, title insurance coverage often is not available for marketability, the ability to sell your property with this encroachment. And that's really where it comes back to really kind of surprise a lot of buyers who buy properties with encroachments. It's not with their use, it's with their later sale. So all of that's great. And now that you know all of that, what can you do with it? Well, if you're a buyer or a seller, you don't want to get caught, as you mentioned in the introduction, at the last minute finding out about these title defects. And while I love our standard form contracts, and I think they do a great job putting them out, I really don't like the standard provision for when title needs to be examined. That provision, it's on line 145 of the as-is contract, which says that if a buyer's paying cash, they don't get to find out about title defects, assuming a seller is paying for title and providing it, up until the day of closing. So you can be a seller
Wow.
walking into your closing thinking, great, I'm getting here ready to get my check or ready to have my funds wired, really looking forward to that other house I'm buying. And you can get a proper, timely title objection that day, the day after, the day you've moved everything out and you're ready to get your money. And it's a little bit silly. So one thing you can do as a buyer, if the seller's providing for title, change that provision. Require any issues with the title to be given to you well ahead of time, not the day of closing. If you're getting a mortgage, the default for the buyer to receive copies of the title and find out if there's issues prior to closing. So the first thing a buyer can do if they're not in control of the closing is to make sure they get the title information early enough to find out about issues. So that's one thing they can do. Another thing a buyer can do is make sure, as I've mentioned in prior episodes, that they control where the closing goes. You don't want the seller's attorney in charge of examining the title, especially when it's going to be the day of closing that you're going to find out if there's an issue. One, you want somebody who represents you looking at this to make sure that there's any issue, to make sure if there is any issues, the person who's got a fiduciary duty to you is resolving them. And that's a very important part. If you're a seller, obviously you probably don't know about your encroachments. If you do, disclose them. But if you don't know about them, what can you do? Well, you probably had a title search as a seller when you bought the property and have a title policy somewhere. Get that title policy out, get your survey out, and we can take a look at those ahead of time. And we can do the research when you list your property, and we can make sure if there's any defects, at least as a seller, we would start curing them from day one when you decide to make your, when you decide to do the sale rather than, or you decide to do the listing, rather than when you're under the gun and you have a month or less to close on the transaction. So really, there's a lot to do with it. One nice thing for condominiums, you don't have to worry about most of this. Most of your traditional condominiums, encroachments really just don't exist. You know, if there was one encroachment, everything would be encroaching, and they just don't exist. Any particular questions or things I can touch on?
So, Michael, if that happens, we're getting some feedback here. I apologize. It's the day of closing, and the buyer gets the title, and then find out there is a problem. Does that start the 30-day clock, and it can move the closing back another month?
So it's yes, the giving of that notice starts that 30-day timer, automatically extends the closing to 10 days after the buyer receives notice that the seller has cured the defects. So it really can be up to 40 days after that closing date.
So the buyer at that point isn't at risk of having to purchase something he doesn't want. You invoke that process that you shared a couple minutes ago.
Correct, right. The title defect letter is sent. That automatically extends out the closing period, protects the buyer, protects the buyer's deposit. That is an extremely important part, because if that notice is not given, then objections to title defects are waived, and the buyer has to accept title with the title with it in its existing condition.
Excuse me. So 2 points. A buyer definitely wants someone to provide title insurance, correct?
Absolutely.
I apologize. So I can go to a national title services company and purchase title services, or I can go to a local attorney.
Absolutely.
Which is the best decision?
Without being too self-interested, of course, your local attorney is your best bet. Our local attorneys, myself included, are trained and know how to examine a survey to see if there's defects. I'll tell you, the vast majority of title defects we see are these encroachments into subdivision restrictions, and the vast majority of them had non-attorney title companies handle the prior closings. So I spend good portions of my day fixing these non-attorney title companies' problems. A lot of these, some of the other defects I mentioned earlier, the defective deeds, the unreleased interests, and so forth, most of them are brought about by title companies not following up on things. And so I can't urge people more. Use an attorney. Even if you want to take a cynical view and say the attorney is going to screw up your title just as bad as an independent title company, at least you got one extra person to sue. Not to be cynical, but it's true. If you hire a national title company, you sue the national title company if your title's wrong. If you hire an attorney and your title's wrong, then you get to sue the title underwriter who insures it, that same national title company, and your attorney. And while, of course, we hope that there's never issues, we hope to resolve all the issues. And all the years of practicing, I've never had a title claim made against me that, well, never had a title claim made. We work very hard to make sure that these things don't result in problems. So I can't urge you more. Have an attorney represent you. Have somebody who has an ethical duty to have your interest at the forefront of their minds handling your transaction. We don't cost any more than non-attorney title companies, and you really do get something for nothing.
So the value is absolutely essential as far as I'm concerned, because on the buy side, we're not really trained to understand the title when it comes back, and you need the expertise, you need the legal services. So once again, Michael, outstanding job. I really appreciate the fact that you take time out of your busy schedule on Wednesday mornings to share your thoughts and ideas with us. Excellent. Any last minute comments?
No, thanks so much for having me, and look forward to next week.
Believe it or not, next week will be November. So this is kind of wrapping up. The year's going by fast. But Michael, thank you. I appreciate everything. Folks, this is the October 31st edition of Title Time with Mike and Mike. Those that have watched live, we appreciate that. Those that'll see the recording, thank you very much. Mike, if they want to talk to you more, what's your phone number?
You can call me anytime. The number at the office is 941-957-0080.
Thank you, Michael. Take care.
Thanks, Mike. You too.